Hey, what's up, everybody? What's up, boxing fans around the world? What's up, Fight Hype family? It's your man, Sean Zittel, holding it down as always from the illustrious high tech studios here in Las Vegas for Fight Hype Live. But today, yes, we are biting off of First Take a little bit here, a lot of it, but we're going to do Fight Take, all the other big sports, baseball, football, basketball. They all have First Take and Undisputed. I know Skip and Shannon aren't together anymore, but Undisputed is still a thing. First Take's a thing. And all those other sports have pundits talk about the best topics going on, the most important topics going on in each sport. So that's what we're here to start today on Fight Take here on Fight Hype. And it's your man, Sean Zittel. And I'm so happy to be joined by none other than, of course, my man, Brendan Taylor of True School Sports, a guy who's been in the field for about a decade now. He watches more fights than just about anybody else in media, studies tape constantly, very passionate, and isn't afraid to give his opinion regardless of what me or you think. So, Brendan, what's good, brother?
Listen, Sean, it's an honor to be here. You know, I've been wanting to do something like this with you for a lot of time, so it's good to be on Fight Hype or Fight Take, right? Fight Take. So good to be here and ready to talk some boxing.
Yeah, man. Fight Take on Fight Hype, baby. We had to bring in BT. We had to bring in Brendan Taylor. Me and Brendan will come out from Florida. He'll come cover some of the big fights here in Vegas. And when he does that, for years now, for over a half decade now, for as much as we agree on boxing, we disagree basically just as much as we agree. And some of those conversations, yes, and some of them conversations get good. So we'll try to bring you guys some of that today. So our first topic ever here on Fight Take is the Errol Spence Terrence Crawford rematch, or I guess we got to say Crawford's name first, right? Because he's the undisputed champion and he won the first fight. It hasn't been official or anything yet, Brendan. Remember, Terrence has to sign off. We haven't heard anything from Errol Spence or from PBC, any of those people. But Bomac has been doing some interviews overseas in England. He's helping Chris Eubank Jr. get ready for his rematch with Liam Smith. And he winds up saying in a few interviews that the rematch clause has been activated by Spence, and they're going to go ahead and take that fight. What do you think about all that, Brendan? Are you interested at all in a rematch? And if that's what's going to happen, can Errol Spence make it a more competitive fight and even win it?
Well, to answer your question, Sean, you know, I was barely interested in the first fight because I thought Crawford. It took long enough to happen, and then when it happened, you know, it was very uncompetitive. So, like the rematch. Of all the available options for Crawford, it's the least desirable for me. I'd rather see him fight Tim Tszyu or even fight, you know, we talked about Ennis a lot. Canelo's been talked about. I really don't see, like, for Spence, right? He's at this point it's a no-lose situation for Spence because he can't do any worse than he did in the first fight. Like it's kind of the sense of where, like, you know, like it was. I think the best case scenario was the Ivan Robinson Gotti situation. Remember when Gotti fought Robinson in the rematch and Gotti still lost, but like in the fourth round he says, "You wanted a war, you got one," and it was a memorable fight.
He hurt him. Yeah, hurt him multiple times. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the best case scenario for Spence. I just don't see how he's gonna get around the counter punching. The only way I think Crawford loses the fight against Spence is if he gets completely abandons his counter punching and just sits in the middle of the ring. But even then, like we saw in the first fight, we saw Crawford able to hold his ground and push Spence back. So I mean, I don't know. I'd rather see Spence fight Ennis or something like that.
Well, you mentioned the Gotti Robinson rematch, and I thought of Shane Mosley, and I commend Spence for his competitiveness and his pride as a champion and as a fighter, for wanting to get back into a rematch that nobody else but him wants to see and thinks he can win. You know, Shane Mosley did that with Vernon Forrest, and he did that with Winky Wright, and he actually did a lot better in both of those rematches. He almost got knocked out by Forrest in the first fight, got blown out. He winds up winning about 4 rounds in the rematch in Indianapolis, and then against Winky Wright, he winds up winning 4 rounds again. So, but I'm skeptical if Spence can have that kind of improvement, because I think the best case scenario for Spence is he has that kind of improvement that Shane had in those 2 rematches, or he has the kind of improvement Jermaine Taylor had in the rematch with Kelly Pavlik. But I'm skeptical that he can do that, even at 154, where I think he'll be stronger. And I just look at this rematch as like I did with George Kambosos and Devin Haney. One guy and Kambosos and Spence, probably can't do anything to really change things the second time around. But there's so much money on the table, and there's an opportunity if it's he can't fight him at welterweight. He'll have to go to 54. But there's so much money on the table. And then the pride as a fighter, you feel like you can do better the first time. You didn't give the best account of yourself the first time. And I believe that is the case with Spence. I think no matter what, Crawford's counterpunching is just too much for Spence at the level he counterpunches, at the power he does it with. But I do think Spence can get better, but I'm skeptical that he can get better to the degree that Shane did in those rematches, that Holyfield did in the rematch with Lewis, that Taylor did in the rematch with Pavlik, that Deontay Wilder did from fight number 3, from fight number 2 with Fury. I think that's the best case scenario. Not him winning, but he can make it a lot more close, and I'm skeptical if he can do that. Like you said, he can't do worse than he did the first time, so I do think he can improve on it at 154. I would rather see, me and you are hardcore guys. I want to see that James Toney, Mike McCallum modern day fight between Jaron Ennis and Terrence Crawford, but I understand Crawford's moved beyond that in his career. Ennis has never been a champion. Besides passing the eye test with boxing nerds like me and you, he hasn't actually done anything. And so if Crawford wants to go ahead and fight Canelo, I don't know if Canelo really wants that. Canelo, I think, recently is starting to not shoot it down because Crawford's pumping it up.
He's been acknowledging the fight recently.
Well, he doesn't want to make it look like he's ducking Crawford or he's scared. So and he understands if he says to media guys, I'm not really interested in that fight. That's more of a win-win for him, lose-lose for me. Well, then that sounds soft to people and everything. So, now that Crawford's kind of egging it on, he's living up to it. But for Crawford, again, I'd rather see Canelo fight Benavidez than Crawford fight Ennis. But if Crawford's going to fight Canelo, he said, Brendan, it's my era after he beat Spence. He's definitely one of the best from the era, like your boy Chocolatito, like a few others. But if he beats Canelo, it really is his era. He really does kind of close the door that he was the best fighter in the post-Mayweather-Pacquiao era.
Crawford versus Canelo will kind of have like a WrestleMania feel to it. I know you like wrestling too, so I feel like The Rock versus Stone Cold, but for boxing.
It would be. I mean, it's a cross of worlds that were never supposed to be, like Hulk Hogan and The Rock, I guess, except nobody's old like Hulk Hogan. But that crossing of worlds, But yeah, I we'll see, man. When I look at it, and I'm saying Spence has probably got to take this rematch, if nothing else, because that kind of big-time money that you work your whole career, amateur and pro, to get to, it doesn't come around too often. And, that's what you risk your life for, is to make that kind of life-changing money each time out for your family. So can he make that same kind? I know Al Heyman, gets his guys paid and whatnot, but can he really make close to the same kind of money fighting Brian Mendoza or Brian Castano or maybe Virgil Ortiz at 154, but those, we'll see. Ortiz hasn't been in a ring in a while, and so any other thoughts on
right now, Virgil?
Yeah. So any other thoughts on that, man?
I don't have too many other thoughts. I hope that, if it's gonna happen, I hope they don't waste time and it can happen in a timely manner, because you got guys in and around that weight like Jaron Ennis and even like Tim Tszyu at 54, who I would like to see get opportunities to be in a big fight themselves. So hopefully this doesn't drag out.
Yeah, when it comes to Tim Tszyu, who I think should actually take a big look at fighting him is Jaron Ennis.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Crawford the job's done for Crawford at welterweight, kind of like Haney at lightweight. Once they move up, they're gone. They're not going to come back down. And Crawford has already let you know, I would like to fight at 54 against Charlo or 68 against Canelo, so he's headed upwards. And he already told you he doesn't want to fight Ennis, basically. And I understand his reasons why. So if you're Ennis, like we talked about with Benavidez a couple years ago, moving up to light heavyweight, maybe you got to cut off Crawford on his way up the scales. If you can beat Tim Tszyu, Crawford can't become undisputed at 154 without going through you now. So, and they both have deals with Showtime, but they're both not. Oh, I think Tszyu is actually with PBC, but Ennis is with Cameron Duncan still. So, but it's a makeable fight, is my point. Yeah. But yeah.
Now, picking off Tim Tszyu would definitely put him in the driver's seat for one of those fights, because right now he's just too high risk, low reward. He's basically what he's what Spence was all those years ago when Thurman was the guy at welterweight, and he was calling the big fights.
Right, and so now the tables turn, like everyone says now.
Yep.
I mean, Ennis right now is like lined up to face the likes of Crowley and Stanionis. Stanionis obviously a tougher test than Crowley. I think you'd agree with that, right?
Stanionis, yeah, and Crowley, yeah.
But he beats both of them, and I don't think anybody picks either one of them to beat him. So, but I get it. Ennis wants to get that welterweight strap before he moves up. He wants to say he was a world champion at welterweight, so I get it. But yeah, we'll see. But switching gears, let's talk about Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson. I talked about this a lot yesterday on the live. So a couple things I want to shoot your way. They're going back and forth. Was 25%, what do you think of the offer of 25% from Haney, who obviously is the undisputed lightweight champion, and Shakur would have been the challenger, obviously. What do you think of the offer? Who do you think would win that fight? And when do you think it will happen?
So initially I thought the 25%, I feel like Devin signed a very unfavorable contract with George Kambosos Jr. He beat him twice. So by beating him twice, I felt like he was in the position to dictate, what he wanted in that situation. And if they fought, I think Shakur would beat Devin. So when Shakur didn't take the fight, I was disappointed in Shakur because I was like, okay, Devin's obviously a fantastic fighter. He didn't get to where he got to on accident, but I've always thought Shakur was just a cut above Devin, and I've been thinking this for years from way back when they had that sparring session. And so yeah, I was disappointed in Shakur. And as far as when it happens, listen, it's going to be a really fun fight in the fall of 2025.
That's not that bad. That's you being kind of conservative.
Not that bad. And you know what? If Crawford and Spence in the build-up to that taught us anything, there's nothing that's better for a big fight than two bitter fan bases. Because look at us, we're still talking about Crawford Spence, and it's been well over a month.
And 6 years before that.
Yeah, exactly.
So here's my thing. I like what you say about, look, Devin, and I'm sure Team Haney would love what you said too. Like, we took the short end of the stick to go overseas and beat George Kambosos. Now we're undisputed. We're going to ask the challenger to do the same thing the champion asked us to do when we were the challenger, right? So I get all that. But I'm like, deep down, you guys know he's going to turn down that 25%. And you can hold true to saying, well, that's on him then. I get that. But it's like, he's going to turn that down, and you really want to go to 140 pounds because you're not 100% at 135 anymore. So that's why yesterday I kind of called it a move of political theater. Not that if Shakur would have actually anteed up and took the 25%, Devin would have, oh, never mind, I was just kidding. No, Devin would go through with it. But I think Devin, it was more of an offer of, here, shut the fuck up. It wasn't an offer of, we want to fight Shakur Stevenson next. We're hoping he takes this because this is the fight we want next. No, the fight we want next is at 140 pounds. Regis Prograis and all that. But everyone won't shut up about us making this move we've been telling you we're going to make. And everyone, all the critics and whatnot are going to try and construe me as moving up to 40 as ducking Shakur. So here's your 25% then if you really want the fight that bad. And I think they knew he would turn that down. And Shakur turning it down is kind of like when Caleb Plant turned down Canelo the first time around. He was going to get 6 weeks notice. He was going to get less money than he inevitably got in November of 2021 when he did get his full 10-week camp, So fighters know their value. And I get why Shakur turned it down. And that fight just realistically, it isn't ready yet in the way that Haney and Tank and Haney and T.O. and Shakur and Tank are ready yet. And Tank and Ryan was ready. Those fights are all more ready for pay-per-view than Haney and Stevenson. Two pure boxers. In a Tank fight, in a T.O. fight, there's a potential knockout. And Shakur has yet to fight on pay-per-view. Tank and Devin have, and T.O.'s headlined at the Garden a couple times, been on some multi-million view fights. Shakur's gotten 1 million views himself too on ESPN. But I think, and as to who would win that fight, I think at 35 it's Shakur these days, because I don't think Devin's 100% going forward, squeezing down to 135.
That's why I'm not upset about the fight,
right?
Not happening at 35. I'd rather it be when they're both at at weight they can both make, because if Shakur were to be victorious that fight, I don't want a repeat of what's been happening in the aftermath of Crawford and Spence, where now some people aren't giving Crawford credit. They're trying to talk about Victor Conti and the snack program, and it's just like, nah, man, get the guys flowers. We waited long enough. I don't want to repeat any of that. So if we have to go through this little storm right here to get a better fight at 40 and a fight where both guys are more healthy, then so be it.
I think it benefits Haney more at 140 because he's the bigger man.
Yeah.
And I think it only benefits him even more if they had to fight at 147 one day. That would benefit Devin even more. So I think the higher the weight they go, the more it begins to favor Devin Haney. When you go back and watch that sparring they had, Devin was losing when he was trying to box with Shakur on the outside. But once he began to kind of grasp, I'm bigger than him, and begin to fight like the bigger man, and impose yourself on him.
Flood a little bit.
Right. Once he started doing that, getting Shakur to the ropes, getting to his body, exchanging with him, he started to do a lot better in that sparring session. So that's a 50-50 fight. I know the consensus keeps forming around Shakur Stevenson, that he beat Tank, that he beat Devin, and I understand that. I understand he's a special young fighter in his own right. But I think Devin's a special young fighter too, and he's bigger. And Shakur, in fights like Nakatia, he could be made uncomfortable. Now, he's been dominant since that fight. He's looked great against Herring and Valdez and Yoshino. He's been offensively more prolific since that fight. But still, that was, we're nitpicking here, but you're looking at, okay, can he get uncomfortable if a long guy, Nakatia was long, can get to him, can touch him at long range where he's so good at pulling back by a little bit and making you fall short by just an inch, just shy of his nose and everything. If Devin, with his length and his speed, is able to get off on him and make it two-way action, the some of that from the Nakatia fight show up. But most people seem to have Stevenson as a favorite. What do you think?
I'll say this about Shakur. Over the years, I've heard Shakur say a lot about himself, that he's a lot like Pernell Whitaker. Well, you know what? There were times in Pernell Whitaker's career when Pernell Whitaker had to go up and weight against the likes of Buddy McGirt. And as the smaller man, he had to fight as he was a bigger man. When he moved up to welterweight, he fought Buddy. He wasn't the slick boxing Pernell Whitaker that he has a reputation for being now. He was a guy that was on the front foot, fighting more of that aggressive fight. So if Shakur Stevenson really is, if he feels like he is like Pernell Whitaker, then fighting Devin at a higher weight class would be the ultimate way to prove that.
This is tougher for Shakur with Devin, I think, because Buddy was 5'6". He was a little welterweight.
Yeah. He wasn't huge, but just an analogy.
Oh no, for sure. But that one big advantage Haney does have over these other lightweights, that the four kings he came up with, is his length and his size. He's a little bit taller and longer than the rest of these young guys like Tio, Tank, and Shakur. Listed at 5'9", might be more like 5'8", but he's like Terrence and Floyd. He's at 5'8", 5'9", with long arms. So
yeah, he's definitely rangy. Yeah, that isn't like Buddy McGirt at all. That's a lot taller,
right,
rangier.
Right. When it comes to Devin, Tank, and Shakur, I'm just like, it's basically 50-50, and we can have fun. We could go back and talk about it and reassess things after each of their fights, because I do know that after their most recent fights, I always pick Devin to beat Shakur and Tank, in part because of his size.
Yeah.
But then after their most recent fights, I started, I might be wrong about that. It really is just 50-50 until we actually see it.
Yeah, I guess out of all those four, the one that I'm having some reservations about these days is if Shakur fights Tank. That's the one I'm like, I don't know. I favor Shakur, but I don't know if Tank gets to him, if he hits him the wrong way, I don't know if Shakur is going to have the durability to stay away from a guy like Tank.
Well, just lastly on Devin with Shakur and Tank. Shakur and Tank are a little bit more accurate than Devin. A little bit more accurate punchers. I think CompuBox backs that up.
Economical.
Yeah, they're a little more accurate and economical, and Devin's busier. So that would be interesting. But with Shakur and Tank, I might give the edge. Tank's the more gifted fighter. I might give the edge to Shakur, though, because Tank doesn't throw a lot of punches per round. He'll give rounds up, and Shakur has a better jab than Tank. And we saw how important southpaw versus southpaw that jab was for Terrence over Errol. And you mentioned so smartly, you think that, and then Terrence wound up kind of confirming what you thought days later, that he kind of picked off that jab from Shakur, as opposed to always the young guys borrowing from the older guys. He decided to be a little bit more jab dominant in the southpaw stance, and that's more like Shakur Stevenson, Pernell Whitaker. But I do think that's a big advantage for Shakur over Tank. He has a better jab, but Tank's more gifted than him. He's blessed with better power.
I think Tank is probably hands down the most athletic fighter Shakur has ever fought in his career. I don't think I haven't seen Shakur in the pros with somebody quite as athletic and as explosive as Tank. And he's not just athletic and explosive. He's obviously he can box too. So I think there's some attributes Tank brings to the table that might be able to get around some of those things in moments of that fight.
Yeah, we got to see how Shakur would react to the power and Haney. You know,
because like you mentioned
that might be what the fight comes down to. If they can withstand the power a couple of times, they'll be all right and can win a decision.
Yeah, you compared it to like you used Crawford and Spence as an analogy for the southpaw and southpaw thing, but the thing is, Tank in comparison to Spence, is a much better athlete, much more explosive. He's not as mechanical with his punch selection. He's a lot more unpredictable. So,
Hey, we got a guy in the chat real quick says Bud's gonna stop Canelo. He calls us casuals talking. I want you to just throw some names at him and let's see if Bud gonna stop Canelo. We just throw some names at him and see if this man even knows some of the names you watch.
Like what? Like fighters? Just
yeah. Since he's so hardcore, let's see if he knows some of these fighters. Shoot him his way.
I'll name some opponent. I'll name some. Do you know who Larry Mosley is? How about Larry Mosley, or how about Larry Gomez? What about Oscar Collazo? What about Jonathan Bombo Gonzalez? You know him? You don't know him.
Talking about Eric Tudor. Now, talking about the Miami boys. Dominique Francis. Brandon Pizarro, right?
Brandon Pizarro?
Yep.
Don't know them.
They don't know. Come on, Bud, gonna stop Canelo. Don't be a hater. This is episode 1. You can't be a hater yet. You gotta let us grow before you start hating. You can't hate from the gate.
You can't hate from the gate. I'll name some Crawford opponents you probably never heard of. Andres Gorgeous Georges. You remember him? Remember when Crawford fought Andres Gorgeous Georges with the dreads on top rank? They hit him with that big ass right hand.
Knocked his ass out.
Face first.
And underneath a tent somewhere in the middle of America.
Yeah. Somewhere in the middle of America. But he never seen that.
He never seen it. No, Bud gonna stop Canelo. Just stick around, bro. But all right. By the way, what'd he say? Okay. Anyway, so before we close on Shakur too, what do you think of the Frank Martin fight? I love it. If Shakur dusts him off like a lot of people think he will, it's because Shakur is really elite. It's not because Frank Martin's not pretty good. He is pretty good. He checks a lot of boxes: speed, power, can move, can counter, solid defense. It's just there's probably going to be levels to this. But who knows, man? Shakur might have his hands full. Frank Martin's no joke. He's formidable. What do you think?
Nah, I love that fight. I think if you're preparing for a Tank fight, that's the guy you fight.
Yeah.
Frank Martin is an extremely athletic, explosive fighter. He doesn't quite have the boxing IQ of a Tank, because I think sometimes Frank he doesn't know when to be an athlete in the ring and when to be a boxer. He sometimes he doesn't know when to apply his tools at the proper times. But if Shakur gets hit by Frank Martin, because we saw in that last fight with Artur Haratunian towards the end of the fight, Frank was still very dangerous. I think he had some of his best rounds towards the end of that fight.
I think he dropped him in the 12th.
Stopped him in the 12th. So if Frank is able to hit Shakur, and Shakur is able to withstand that, then that should give Shakur a lot more confidence going into a Tank fight, and that should give people a lot more confidence going into a Tank fight.
No, that's a great point. I would be curious to see how Shakur handles Frank's power. Just how he's going to handle Frank, period, because I think a lot of people think Shakur is going to wash him, and I get that because Shakur's a special young fighter, but I think Frank's pretty good. His problem is he started at 18 years old, and Shakur started since he was a little kid, and that pedigree, I think, is going to catch up during the fight. Especially, Shakur's just hard to hit, and he has a better jab than Frank. But it should be a good fight. Again, Frank brings a lot to the table at 135. He's big. Well, no, he's not. He's big and strong guy, not tall. But again, fast, can punch, southpaw, solid defense, good footwork. It again, if Shakur dominates this fight to become the vacant WBC champ at lightweight, it's going to say more about Shakur than the lack of Frank Martin, in my opinion. So we'll see.
The real question is it actually going to happen? Because I know that they ordered
I think so.
But is it? You think so?
Yeah, because what else are you going to do with Frank Martin? You're not going to give him Isak Cruz. You're not going to give him Tank Davis. Chris Colbert's a 130-pounder. Rayo Valenzuela already lost. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. If you're dead set on not letting the guy fight on ESPN Top Rank, you could always come up with something. Don't get me wrong, but his last fight did. And I'm not picking on him. This is just what the ratings are doing right now on Showtime, and I'm not picking on Showtime. They're killing ESPN Top Rank when it comes to big fights, pay-per-view fights, but
big events. Yeah.
Right. But on network television, their ratings are, I think, like a third of what ESPN's typically pulling in on those top rank shows. So Frank he's not ready for pay-per-view yet, and they're struggling to draw with top fighters on Showtime Championship Boxing. So why not let him get paid, let him fight for a title, and who knows, maybe he pulls off an upset, and now you have a star in the lightweight division returning back to your network. So I think it'll happen. I don't think these sanctioning bodies do purse bids without signing off with the promoters usually anyways. But we'll see.
We'll see. Hopefully it gets announced quickly and swiftly, so box fans don't gotta wait too long.
So we actually did a lot of agree. Hold on, we got a quick super chat from someone. And perfect timing, Molly Mall, because we are just about to touch on this. So Molly Mall said, "Why has every division had a big fight except heavyweight?" Fair. Most people would blame Tyson Fury because Fury wanted to get paid for an easy fight against Francis Ngannou. I give the Gypsy King a hall pass because I personally think he'll beat Alexander Usyk, and he's not really ducking him. He's just not fighting him right now until he does. But I think most people would blame Fury. And then if you're mad that you haven't got Wilder Ruiz yet, maybe Wilder should give up something closer to 50-50. Not 50-50. But if this money in Saudi with Joshua,
You're saying a compromise?
It's a compromise, yeah. If this money in Saudi Arabia is funny money, which it hasn't been lately, but if it is this time, then, fuck it, man. Go back to the drawing board with Ruiz, concede a better percentage, and make a big fight before the year's over. Wilder and Ruiz. But moving on to the heavyweight division, or what's your answer to Molly Mall? Molly Mall wants to know, why haven't we had any big fights in the heavyweight division?
I genuinely believe it's a culmination of the last 5 to 6 years. It all started back when Joshua and Wilder were supposed to fight and they couldn't come to an agreement. Mm-hmm. You can have your say. Some people say it was Joshua, some people say it was Wilder, but that was part of the equation. Then all these guys losing. And AJ having the rematch, and I just think when all the guys that have been at the top, that have been the man in the division, once they were the man in the division, they just haven't been the most responsible champions, and for one reason or another, we just haven't been able to get those big fights. And now, this is why.
What do you mean? Fury was responsible. He responsibly did the rematch with Klitschko. He showed up.
Klitschko, you trolling me?
Yes, totally. Go ahead.
No, but now we're in a situation where you got Fury fighting an MMA fighter in a straight cash grab, and I hate to be the guy that brings this up, but Usyk has a mandatory deal with Filip Hrgović, and I know people don't want to see it. But he has a mandatory since last August, and we're in August now.
Okay, full disclosure, chat. People watching across the world, yeah, America and abound. Brendan Taylor, great boxing mind, loves the sport, studies it, but then he gets these odd opinions every now and then. He believes that Filip Hrgović would beat Alexander Usyk. He probably thinks Filip Hrgović is the best heavyweight in the division. Full disclosure, Brendan, where are you broadcasting live from?
South Florida.
Where does Filip Hrgović tend to train at?
South Florida.
Okay, go ahead.
But before, let me respond to that. Before I ever met him in South Florida, I was always high on him. When I saw him in the Olympics, when he fought, because it was him, it was Joyce, and it was Tony Yoka that all medaled that year. And I thought, I have videos to prove it. I said back then, back in 2018, 2019, I think Phil Hergovich is the best of that class. But listen, I just want to see the guy get his chance. I don't know how good he is.
Mm-hmm.
I think highly of him, but I don't know how good he is. If he's not that good, then just get him out the way so that he's not there and we can move on with the division if he's not that good, right?
Well, one thing he's got going with him with Usyk, if that fight happens for him, he's bigger than him, which most guys have over Usyk in this division, but his best weapon is his little nice chopping right hand. He can throw it down the pipe. He could chop with it a little bit. That's his best weapon, his right hand. And that is the southpaw killer. And Dubois, few times landed that right hand. He was too slow. Hergovich is quicker than him on the draw with that right hand. But your boy Hergovich doesn't really move his head. He stands straight up. And against a slower, much bigger, much more powerful southpaw and Big Bang Zhang, those punches from the southpaw stance, he had a hard time getting out of the way of anything in the second half of that fight. And he had any guy in this weight division with his size, punching with the quickness he does for his size, is going to have some good pop with that right hand. But Usyk, not to the body as well, but he's held up well with these big heavyweights who some guys like Joshua punch harder than Hergovich. I know Hergovich is a little quicker with the right hand than Joshua, but doesn't hit as hard as Joshua. So I don't think he knocks Usyk out with the right hand. And also, big problem for him in that fight, Brendan. That right hand's good and all, but he gets predictable with it. I saw him use the hook a couple times, touch the body against Zhang, but for the most part, it's the right hand. And if Usyk figures that out, which I think he would, he doesn't have that much outside of that. And then he doesn't have the conditioning. All these big guys trying to fight with Usyk get exhausted, except Fury will, because he can match him in this department. But they get exhausted dealing with that lead hand magic and that constant lead hand magic and feints, paw, and then he shoots it. And then and then he becomes unpredictable with his offense off of that right there. The bread and butter is the lead hand magic, feint, make these guys mentally and physically exhausted from having to deal with this smaller guy constantly moving and feinting and constant motion. But and I think Hergovich would be no different. I think the only guy in the heavyweight division who won't get tired from biting on those feints and can match him is Fury.
I think if Hergovich would have fought Usyk maybe like 2 fights ago, I would have agreed with you. But like the problem is, look at his last 2 fights. I mean, he fought Zhang, which was tough fight for him. Then he fought Dempsey McKean, who's not the greatest heavyweight in the world, but still an undefeated ranked guy. He's boxed 24 rounds with some good southpaws, and I think now that he's got that experience with southpaws in the pros, he's going to be a lot more well equipped to deal with that. You're right in what you're saying with the attack being a bit predictable, but in that last fight he had with Dempsey McKean, he added this little like overhand right. I never really see him throw too many overhand rights, and that was actually the punch that he wound up stopping Dempsey McKean with. So I just personally, I'll get on the record now. I think he's going to beat Usyk if they fight. If the IBF calls the fight, I think Hergovich is going to beat Usyk just because of the simple fact that we don't know how good he is. I think I know how good he is, but I don't know until he actually gets to fight. He's not as athletic as Usyk, but the thing is, you don't need to be as athletic as Usyk to get to him. We saw Chisora push him back.
Yeah.
We saw Dubois had his fair share of success, and I just believe that the right hand of Hergovich, it's very educated. He's added in that overhand right with Ronnie Shields, because they have 2 training camps now. So he added that in the second camp with Shields, and I just think it's a bad fight for Usyk. I think it's a combination of size, experience. It's really the experience. I don't think anybody's as well equipped to deal with Usyk from the experience department. I mean, the guy was bronze medal in the amateurs, been in camp with all these top guys. On top of that, he's boxed 24 rounds with two undefeated southpaws, back-to-back fights. Outside of Tyson Fury, there is nobody at heavyweight more equipped to fight in Usyk right now. That's how I feel. But we'll see.
Stranger things have happened. If Usyk wasn't to fight Fury, I'd rather see him fight Wilder than Hergovich. I think that's like a tightrope act for Usyk. It'd be like the King Kong Ortiz rematch. He'd be winning rounds, stepping around, doing his southpaw stuff, but all Wilder would need is to line him up one time and the fight could be over. But yeah, we'll see. Was that a low blow with Dubois and Usyk?
I don't think it was. I don't think it was because you have this thing in boxing, and it's been around forever, where dudes pull their shorts all the way up. So it's always hard to know what's a low blow and what's not. And then
was Sergey Kovalev somewhere at home saying, well, they didn't call it low when I got hit even lower than that in the rematch with and he was going to get stopped no matter what. If Andre's listening, I don't want him to think we're doing that, but still.
When Kovalev got hit low, they said it was one of the best body shot knockouts of all time.
Jim Lampley was like, "That's what a finisher does. Go to the body when they're hurt." So, but there was that beautiful straight right hand that set that up. But yeah,
exactly. I thought for Dubois, I mean, he did have the rest of the fight to do something after that, but at the same time, it's like, damn, it's like you're already fighting Alexander Usyk in Poland. It's like, if you're gonna beat him, that's the kind of shot you're gonna have to land.
Yes.
And he wasn't able to, to get I guess, be on the right side of the officiating. So
when it happened live, right on the moment, what was your thought? Right when it happened, no replay.
I was like, I thought that was a knockout. I thought it was legal. I thought it was a perfectly clean shot.
I think on my live, I called it like, oh, he got him. He got him with a body shot and down, and he hurt him with a left hook to the body in a round or two before that. And his time, he was starting to time Usyk, and that's something guys like Fury and Hrgovic could take. I started to notice he was starting to bite on the feints less, and was beginning to, he was beginning to not bite on the feints as much, and he began to have good timing, but he was too slow. He was just too slow.
He's too slow, and he doesn't have the elite gas tank. I mean, he's really, if you watch Dubois fights in general, he's normally like a 6-round fighter. And then on top of that, outside of the Joyce fight, he's probably been like one of the softest matched heavyweights in the top 15. Mm-hmm. Like, because he won the WBA belt from Trevor Bryan, who I know very well because he's down here in South Florida. Trevor Bryan really shouldn't have had a WBA belt. He fought the Japanese dude who wasn't even a heavyweight, Fujimoto. That was like one of the biggest cherry picks of 2019. So the fact that really Dubois was even had a moment like that against Usyk, to me, I know there's no such thing as moral victories when you fight for a heavyweight title, but when you look at the gap in experience, I take it as a.
I think Bud KO's Canelo, who was in the chat earlier, has long suspended him calling you a casual after some of the names you just named that Daniel Dubois fought in 2019.
Yeah, Kalatari Fujimoto.
There you go. Remember that fight. There you go. So we got a super chat from Jamal Thomas, Brendan, and Jamal says, what division do y'all see being the hot division? And he put in parentheses, no Bill Haney, LOL. Division in the next year with predictions of who moves up within the next year, of course. Is it the division we always joke about that has a million good fighters, just none of them fight each other?
Oh, yeah, 135, right?
Yeah. Because that's not fair, because, Tank and Ryan fought, Haney and Lomachenko fight, Shakur and Frank are going to fight. But up until this year, we had a good time, me and Brendan, saying lightweight is the most talented, most stacked, deepest division, and nobody fights each other. And Brendan, go ahead and give him to him uncut the joke you made about lightweight and dick riding fighters.
You want the uncut?
Yeah.
The uncut?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was telling Sean one day when if you like PBC or you like Golden Boy, you like Top Rank, there's someone to dick ride for everybody.
In the lightweight division, right?
In the lightweight division, if you dick ride Golden Boy, you know Floyd Schofield. If you want to dick ride Top Rank, you got Abdullah Mason and Keyshawn Davis. If you want to dick ride PBC, you got Frank Martin
and Tank,
and Tank and Shakur. So there's something for everybody. And then Sean had the best line of them all. Can I tell him the line, Sean? There was a guy. Yeah. So Sean, I ran through the whole roster. I told Sean about all those guys.
He named like 11. We named Williams and Peta. Like we just kept going and going. Yeah.
The best part about this is Sean says, but yeah, when Shushu get up there, when Bruce Shushu Carrington gets up there, it's over.
Right. Just like it's not enough dick riding in the division. Wait, watch when Bruce Carrington gets up there though. It's gonna be even more. But. But as for what he's saying, what you answer this first, BT. What division do you think in the next year is going to be hot?
In the next year,
besides lightweight,
featherweight.
Really?
Yeah, featherweight.
Who cares? In the name of the other great. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Well, no, because I mean, I don't know. I think Inoue is gonna fight Montepalis in
Right,
December.
The monster's on his way up there. Right,
He will
at
go
some point.
undisputed. He'll win that fight, and then he'll be at featherweight probably next year. And then you got, I think, what is Figueroa at featherweight too?
Say
You
what?
got Fulton.
Figueroa? He is. Fulton's moving up
Yeah,
to
yeah,
26. Yeah,
and
he
you have
is. Yep.
Stephen Fulton moving up. See, I'll say featherweight. I like featherweight.
I'm gonna be cheap here and go 140 or 168 maybe, but 140 I think. Devin's moving up. Tio has moved up. I think that alone makes it hot. I think if they fight next year, that's one of the biggest fights of 2024. So Ryan moved up. Ryan, Devin, and Tio all being at 140 now, can bring more fire. Rolly's there. Rolly, Ryan, Tio, Devin, Pro Grace, Gary, Antoine, Russell, Subrio, Matias. And then always the potential of Tank flirting with 140 since he fought there before. And he still got veterans like Jose Ramirez hanging around, and Barboza's
It'd be nice.
you know.
It'd be nice if a middleweight got a nice facelift from like Jermell Charlo after the Canelo fight just becomes a middleweight, and Spence goes middleweight, and Virgil Ortiz goes middleweight. Like middleweight needs some star power. We need to restore some respect and some star power back to the middleweight division, because it's bad out here.
It's supposed to be, for back in the day, it was considered the second most prestigious crown in boxing behind the heavyweight crown, to be middleweight champion. So
yeah, and now I can't like there's some middleweight champions.
Richardson Hitchens, Molly Mall mentioned Richardson Hitchens. Speaking of Richardson Hitchens, if I'm Eddie Hearn, I'm doing everything I can to get Devin to get me 2 fights, not 1, because I know he's going to beat Regis Prograis, and he'll probably beat Richardson Hitchens too. But at least my other kid is young, fast, long, undefeated, has amateur pedigree. If I'm Eddie Hearn, I'm trying, and maybe that's part of why this fight's taking so long to get done. Probably, maybe not, but I do wonder. Yeah, because what does Eddie Hearn get out of this? The Eddie Hearn special, get his fighter beat, and then goodbye, thank you. But if you're Eddie, you got to be trying to do any and everything to get him to agree to a 2-fight deal in order to get Richardson a shot.
Yeah, because at least if Richardson fights Devin and loses, at least Richardson's profile is built up more because he fought Devin, and then you can actually do something on Richardson after that.
For sure, and it's not a bad fight. Now, I want Devin to get that WBC, go back to Bob, fight T.O., pay-per-view, 140, WBO, WBC. Did you see this shit about the Super WBO? I'm like, Top Rank, what are you doing?
I'd seen it, but I didn't read too deeply into it. What was that all about? T.O.?
So Top Rank petition of the WBO, can you give us a super champion? Like, y'all want them to create a belt that doesn't exist already? Like, between the WBA doing the regular interim super thing and the WBC creating that franchise, it's like, no, please. There's already 7 belts in each division. Please, no. The WBO already gives you everything you want. Top Rank? Fuck. Go ahead.
I'm saying, I always thought that there was enough sanctioning fees to go around, but every time I think that these governing bodies have gotten enough sanctioning fees, they find a way to create some more.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. I love the way they were like, will we get 3% of Devin, or will we get 3% of Ryan, or will we get 3% of Tio? And they found a way to get all 3. It's amazing. They made Ryan interim, they made Devin WBC, and they made T.O. franchise, and that man Mauricio Sulaiman, he found a way to get his 3% out of each of them, and that's why he was ready to put Jake Paul in the top 15. He's like, I'm come hell or high water, I'm getting my 3% of this Jake Paul shit.
And somehow we got to a place in boxing where we can have interim unification fights like Tim Tszyu and Brian Mendoza.
Oh my god. What's next? Cody Crowley, or no? If you could maybe do that with Boots and Stanionis if they fought right now. Let Crawford be full champion and they could fight for interim mini mega IBF WBA unification.
Or it's I remember back in the day on Showbox. I don't know if they saw this title, but they used to have the WBO NABO title.
Of course, NABF USBA.
the UBA, the IBA.
They don't even
like,
try with those belts. They like
the ABF. That's my favorite one. Is the ABF, the Atlantic Boxing Federation.
Anyway, that's a good one. But yeah, I might have to watch the F-bombs. We're trying to keep this ESPN quality, ain't that? Nah, we're on YouTube. We gotta keep it. We gotta keep it a little more raw.
When they cut the check, we'll cut the check.
Exactly. So, but without further ado, man, I think that's about it, man. We're at about 45 minutes. We kept the show good. We'll be doing this every week now, as long as I get Brendan on, right, Brendan?
Of course.
Yes, and hope to do this eventually. We could bring some fighters in and some other journalists. My man Sam Gordon, Alan Dawson, Hans, and so other people in our field that me and Brendan got respect for. But any points you want to make before you get up out of here, BT?
Any points? I can't think of any points at the moment. So the only point I will definitely say is just make sure you guys keep tuning in. When
wait! I got one. Who do you got this weekend? Liam Smith or Chris Eubank in the rematch?
I haven't even put any thought into it.
You don't have to. It's not a very hard fight to pick.
Well, Liam Smith.
There you go. No, I'm just... Maybe not.
I mean, he did hire Bomac, but so did Amir Khan. So we'll see.
Right. So did Amir Khan. Right.
Yeah.
No, I just think Liam Smith is more fundamentally sound than him, and he's tougher than him. He's got better punch resistance, and he's more of a dog. Eubank is more talented, more gifted than him, but it's not like he has this plethora of tricks up his sleeve to offset the more fundamentally sound fighter, putting the pressure on him, getting him to the ropes. I do think it'll take Liam Smith longer this time than it did last time, though. I
mean, it should. I would think that working with Bomac and that whole camp, that you would expect Eubank to be a bit more on his toes. So it might take a couple more rounds for Liam Smith to go find him in the ring.
And then the pride of a fighter, like Spence with Crawford. Even if the other guy's got your number, a proud fighter, going back to the well, going back to the gym, working on everything they can, they're gonna give a better account of himself, probably.
I mean, Eubank has to find a way to get it done for his reputation
in this scenario. In this scenario, because usually the better fighter wins the rematch even better. But if you got dominated the first time, that's a little different. You can improve from that.
Yeah,
can't do worse.
We'll see. See how it goes.
But all right, Brendan, thank you, man. Signing out from down south in Florida and over here in the high-tech, elaborate, illustrious, cutting-edge studios in Las Vegas. Thanks, everybody, for tuning into episode 1 of Fight Take, and have a great rest of the week. I'll see everybody Saturday for Eubank and Smith. God bless everybody. Thank you.